This is Face the State with Rob Hanrahan and the political insiders Tony May and Charlie Giroux.
Very pleased to have with us our new Speaker of the House, Mike Turzai. Thanks for being with us again here on Face the State. Charlie's here, but we're going to start with Tony on the Democratic side and probably pension maybe.
Congratulations again on your elevation to Speaker. It's a great honor, and I know you're going to do a good job at that. I want to go back and talk a little bit about your arithmetic, though.
Yes.
You said that you weren't quite sure that the deficit was going to be $2 billion, but then we talked a little bit about the pension payments going up $500 million this year.
Almost $500 million.
Whether you count that as deficit or not, it's money it's going to cost. How much money do you think the state is going to have to find this next fiscal year?
Well, we'll tell you, we won't fully know until we get a better picture of what the revenues look like coming in. You know, the economy in Pennsylvania has definitely improved. Unemployment has dropped in Pennsylvania to 5.1%, and Pennsylvania, the national average is 5.9%. There's at least 200,000 new jobs in the private sector economy, much of it driven by Marcellus Shale out west and in the north. And I think the revenues may come in better than are projected. Keep in mind, we have a personal income tax that brings in over $12 billion right now. We have the personal income tax is at 3.07%. It was increased under Governor Rendell. The sales tax is at 6%. It brings in a little bit over $9 billion. And then the rest of the approximately $28 billion that comes in are in corporate taxes, inheritance taxes, taxes on energy consumption. Those taxes, cigarette taxes, we'll see what they bring in. But in the first instance, we're going to take a look at what are the existing tax revenues coming in before we're really making it.
Well, the year's half over and we're up a couple $100 million over estimates.
That's right.
So do you think that will hold steady, or are you hoping that it'll be $1 billion over estimate?
I think it's going to hold steady. I'm not going to be able to give you a hard number.
I'm sorry, these are questions we ask speakers.
It's a great question.
And I'm going to ask a question in a minute.
I know you are. It is coming in a couple $100 million over. I think it could be a better projection than we've seen, and I think that's the key. But I do agree with you. You segregate out your pension increase, I don't really think you have an issue. Your pension increase is really the elephant in the room that's got to be addressed. And look, they decreased contributions to the pensions under Act 120. Governor Rendell wanted to spend more in front of him. He couldn't borrow anymore. My goodness, he had already increased borrowing significantly. We, in the last 4 years, actually decreased our debt, by the way, by $600 million, our debt limit. The key is really, how are you going to handle this pension increase that continues to assess?
That's why we keep asking you, how are you going to handle this pension
I think look, we had a plan that we put on the table that we had significant support for.
Yeah.
At the time, we could not pick up any Democratic support for it. I'm telling you, I think that more and more of our colleagues are open to that discussion. I think that going into the election, they didn't want to really address it before the election. I think many of them are willing to address it now. The Tovash proposal, what it did, it was a hybrid plan, but it would have reduced our unfunded liability by something like $14 to $16 billion over the 30 years period of time. It would have brought down that unfunded liability. It would have brought down our costs with respect to the pension contributions, and I think it's a cornerstone of a plan.
Not affected the current employees. Charlie,
and not affected the current employees.
You look great, so why don't you ask a question?
That's all I'm doing. I'm just window dressing today, Mr. Speaker. I'm just a pretty face here on the end of the set.
Charlie, it's good to have you here with me.
Congratulations on your elevation to Speaker. It's a great thing for Pennsylvania and a real honor for you, and a lot of us are very proud of that. I just wanted to come back to the issue of taxes. You said prior to your election as Speaker that there was no appetite that you saw for any increase in taxes. I often focused on the operative word being any. And you talked a moment ago about Marcellus Shale. So I want to talk for a second about the fact that many of us believe that the way to increase revenue is through increasing the size of the economy and economic growth and more jobs rather than through raising taxes, which some of our friends would like to do. Is there any appetite or circumstance under which the General Assembly will in this session go with some sort of special extraction tax on natural gas that might curtail that industry or cause it to falter?
Charlie, it is so tangible out in western Pennsylvania, not to mention, I think, more and more throughout the state. You talk to people who are in engineering, or in commercial real estate, or in car sales, or in truck sales, or in restaurants, or in contracting, or in architecture. Those folks, at least 25% of their business is being driven by the development of natural gas. I'm telling you, across the board.
A huge economic generator.
It's a huge, to have Shell, Chevron, and others putting in billions of dollars into the economy is real. Like, that's real capital, and it's affecting everybody's lives. There are family-sustaining jobs, not just in the industry itself, but in the ancillary work around there. Somebody told me, I was out in Westmoreland County, they had grown their engineering business from 10 to 40 employees. All their employees were buying new cars. They were buying at least one new truck every year. And the trucking companies are all buying new trucks because it's making a difference. And for the consumer, you have lower natural gas costs, right? Both on a commercial level, manufacturing, and on a consumer area, and it's a cleaner fossil fuel.
So are you saying no? You're against the tax?
I think that well, we already have a tax.
I mean, we have the
impact fee. But Rob, here's the thing. Goodness, in some respects, I wish the governor would have just called it a tax. It's equivalent to a 3% severance tax.
It is.
I mean, that's what it is. Now, might there be some discussion? If there's anything that would shut down that development, and listen, Philadelphia and the Southeast is going to benefit from this too, not only in the lower consumer prices, but more and more, I think the Port of Philadelphia is going to be the place where natural gas can be exported to the world. And Sunoco's already put in a significant presence in where the refineries were.
Let me ask a quick follow-up question on a different subject. Liquor privatization, you were very successful in getting your bill through the House, something that dates back to Tony's old boss, Milton Chapman, for which there's overwhelming support in the Commonwealth. Yeah. It was bogged down, as you indicated, in the Senate. There is a much larger Republican majority in the Senate now. Do you think you have a chance to get it through the Senate of Pennsylvania in this session?
I'm always an optimist. I was an optimist last session, to be honest with you. I think my good friends like Senator Scarnati certainly, but I think Scott Hutchinson and Mario Scavello and Michelle Brooks and Ryan Almond, 3 House members who all voted yes, just joined the state Senate. Ryan Almond from Lancaster, Michelle Brooks from up in Mercer County, and Mario Scavello up in Monroe County, all were yes votes in the House. They've now become part of that new expanded Republican majority. My state senator, Randy Vlakovich, is a proponent, has told me, get that bill back over here. I'm glad to work on it again. I think there's a renewed enthusiasm. And people do not want to go to tax increases like a personal income tax increase or a sales tax increase in the first instance. They want to think outside the box. Liquor privatization has a lot of benefits in moving us into the 21st century, but increased revenues is one of them.
And our clock has run out. Is it so hard to interrupt the Speaker of the House, Mike Turzai?
Sorry, did I go too long?
No, not at all.
Just come back.
I'm just sorry, I couldn't let Tony get more questions in. Back with the Keystone Commentary after this, and again, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank
you. First one of 2015.
Thank you, bud.
John Mysick, the Mouth of Penn Live in the Patriot News with us for the Keystone Commentary. Great guest having the Speaker of the House on our first show of 2015.
Next time you might get to ask a question.
Writing last week, okay. You're writing last week about a long slog ahead with the Democratic governor.
Yeah, you know, it was this interesting juxtaposition. On Tuesday, you couldn't walk through the Capitol without tripping through on a banquet table piled high with cakes and cookies and all that kind of stuff. And it's very celebratory, you know, as befits the beginning of a new legislative session. But that belies the fact, and Speaker Turzai alluded to that, to the very hard work that lawmakers have ahead again on both liquor privatization and pension reform, and trying to fill a budget hole that is somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.8 to $2.2 billion. Although Speaker Turzai says maybe that'll change come the end of the fiscal year. So yeah, there's some honest
You have some
work ahead of them.
Democrats about gridlock or compromise, and it seems like you got a lot of this.
Yeah, and Chuck McElhaney was a Republican senator from Bucks County. I asked him that, and literally as an elevator door was closing in the Senate, I said, "What do you think, compromise or gridlock?" And he stopped, and he was like, "Compromise, I guess." Because no one's really quite, again, and Speaker Turzai alluded to this, no one's really quite sure what to make of Governor-elect Wolf and what course he's going to take. Everyone's kind of hoping for the best, but a lot of people I spoke to also are thinking, well, this could be a budget debate that goes on past the June 30th deadline, maybe drags into the summer like it did under Governor Rendell.
Charlie?
It's going to be interesting. I think John has laid out the situation pretty accurately. You mentioned at the beginning of the show that the Republicans control the General Assembly, Rob. They really dominate it in many respects. The lead that Speaker Turzai enjoys in the House is 35 seats. You've got to go back before you were born to find that kind of advantage for the Republicans in the House. The lead in the Senate is as large as they've ever had. If you want to go back...
You realize that's a long time.
That's a very long time. So the question really becomes, what do they do with that numerical advantage, and how realistic does Governor-elect, soon-to-be Governor Wolf, come to the table? Because he surely is not going to get everything that he wanted and referenced in his campaign for governor.
Tony, can I ask you a question? The Speaker also referred to some Democrats may have different positions on things now that the election is over. Do you feel some of them
I think that the real challenge here is not can the legislature, the Republican leaders of the legislature, reach compromise with the governor, not can the but can the members of the General Assembly reach compromise with each other? I think on the one hand, you're going to see a real unwillingness on the part of Democrats in the legislature to give enough votes to seal a deal. They're going to want to make themselves a valuable cog in the wheel by holding their votes back for any deal of any kind until the last minute, which is going to put a lot of pressure on the Republicans to lead the way and to provide a majority or close to a majority, and they're not used to doing that.
That's a good point.
Well, I think that's accurate, though, and I think there's a lot of pressure on the Republicans to lead with an agenda, to show clearly what they're for. It's easy to be against things. It's going to be incumbent upon them now to show what they're for, to lay out an agenda. I think Speaker Turzai is going to do that from day one. I think that Joe Scarnati and the Senate Republicans will do the same. I think you're going to see real vision and real leadership from the Republican side of the aisle.
I mean, we've just come off of a joke that we've just come off of 4 years of divided government with Republicans in control. We're now going to another 4 years of divided government now with a Democrat in the governor's office. I mean, there are some broad issues where the Republicans in the Senate, Republicans in the House don't see eye to eye, notably on liquor privatization. Senator Scarnati is more of a modernization guy that's hanging on to the existing system, where Speaker Turzai is in favor of full privatization. So trying to reach some sort of accord there. I'm not sure how the topography has changed, apart from the fact that you now have 4 privatization votes, as he said, in the Senate who weren't there last term.
All right, got to run. We'll be right back at the final word after this. My thanks to the new Speaker of the House, Mike Turzai, for being our guest. Thank you for watching our first edition of 2015's Face the State. We'll see you next week.